Today I have two new Rosecrafts to show you. Rosecraft has just been killing it this year. All their offerings have been really solid. They've come out with some excellent patterns. The first one is the Mosquito Lake Moose, vintage moss brown bone. Just take a look at this thing. It's gorgeous. I love how they did the bone on these. Single threaded bolsters. This one is a two-bladed knife. Closed length of 4.125 inches, open length of 7.3 inches, half an inch thick. The blade length of both blades is 2.8 inches. Has half stops, has a nice pull, beautiful clip point blade. See the Rosecraft stamping, and yes, you do see the Made in China sticker. And you can see D2 steel, and then the model number, which is RCT016. Nice snap back to the half stop and closed. Secondary blade is a spear point, again with a half stop and with the downward cant, which I really like as far as cutting. It gives you a shearing action. You see it's on the angle there. It comes across and gives you a scissor type cut rather than just a straight on cut. It increases the cutting performance of the knife, and both blades on this knife are like that. Again, on this blade you see the Rosecraft stamp, and then the same thing, D2 steel and the model number. Nice snap back in the half stop and closed. You've got a shield on it, and as is normal for Rosecraft, everything is nice and flush. They do an excellent job on their fit and finish. The second knife is the Tanasi Lake Teardrop Bora in blue bone. And this one is really gorgeous. There's a depth when you look into this bone. Single thread on the bolster. This is a single bladed knife. The very nice spear point blade. One of the things that I like about a spear point is just a great blade shape, is that you can do utility cuts with a spear point because of how it drops down here, similar to a sheep's foot. You can get in there and make cuts without having to stand the knife straight up on end like you do with clip points. For example, if I take this clip point, you've got to get the knife way up in the air before you have that point in the material. So that's one of the things that I really like about a spear point blade. And with that downward cant, it puts at a much lower angle with the handle than you would expect. It puts that point right on the surface for utility cuts. This Tanasi Lake Teardrop is just a great EDC knife. I carry a knife like this as a secondary knife, where my primary knife would be a modern folder, and this is what I'm carrying for today, is a Spyderco Mannix 2 lightweight. This makes a great auxiliary knife to it. I can keep one knife clean for cutting food, have complementary blade shapes for doing different tasks, all kinds of things. So I love to carry both a modern and a traditional, and this is a great choice. I'll tell you that the D2 tool steel and the way Rosecraft heat treats it, these hold a great edge. It's about the same thing as using a modern knife in steels like S30V, S35VN, S45VN. Very similar cutting performance, but D2 is not going to give you the rust resistance of those steels. But still, this gets you out of the simple carbon steels and up into something that really holds an edge. Now let's take a look at the specs on a Tanasi Lake Teardrop. This knife has a closed length of 3.5 inches, an open length of 6.3 inches, a width of 0.45 inches. And something that is really interesting to me is they list this blade as 2.8 inches, which I know is wrong because they list both blades on this knife as 2.8 inches. So let's compare these two spear points. They are clearly not the same. There is a big difference between these. So let me get a ruler and we'll see what this is for real. Okay, we have a total blade length from the bolster of 2 3/4 and a cutting edge of about 2 3/8 versus 3 1/4 inch total blade length, and that would be about 2.8 inch cutting edge. So if you just take the cutting edge on the Moose, that's about the same as the total blade length on the Tanasi. So I think that's where the measurements are messed up in the specs. On here, the 2.8 inches is the total blade length, and on the Moose, the 2.8 inches is just the cutting edge. So they have it in the specs wrong when you list them. So that'll give you an idea of the true size of these knives. And again, you can see the comparison. So when you see the specs online, the Tanasi is actually quite a bit smaller knife than the specs would lead you to believe. So there's the two up next to each other. There's a Manix 2, which is the same size knife as a paramilitary 2. And since we're into traditional knives, here's a large Stockman. So as you can see, the knife is actually pretty similar in size to a large Stockman. The handle may be just a little bit more beefy. You have a little more downward cant in the blade, but a large Stockman is the approximate size of this Moose. So there you go. There's your size comparison, so you know what you're actually looking at. I would highly recommend these knives. If not one of these Rosecrafts, look at some of their other offerings and see if there's something there that you really like, that speaks to you. They're just great knives. They hold a great edge. They're built well. The fit and finish is spectacular. The grinds are done right. The edge is nice and thin. It's just really hard to beat these for the money. And if you're interested in a slip for any of these, for example, this is wine leather with blue stitching, and it is a great slip for this knife. You can check out my Etsy store, lcknives.etsy.com. You'll find slips, leather conditioner, knife pivot lube, and knife flush, and a whole bunch of other things. Check it out, lcknives.etsy.com. We'll see you next time.